Welcome to today's talk session. My name is Deidre Moss, and I'm the host of Can We Talk. I'm an educator, motivator, and a talk connoisseur. For our session today, we wanted to shift our attention to a topic that is important. It is a social concept. And so that will it's normally referred to as the brain drain. And so I believe most persons have a general idea of what the brain drain is. But just in case you may need a little bit of clarity, brain drain, refers to the loss of our best and brightest minds, talent, skills, human capital, our workforce, etc. So today we've invited Dr. Michelle Wallace-Rencher to help us dissect this topic. So at this time, I will pass the virtual mic to our guest so that she can introduce herself.
Deidre, to the world, good afternoon. And as we say, how you doing? So as an introduction, basically, Deidre, I am a mom, I'm a wife, I am a researcher, I'm a change agent, and most of all, I'm a storyteller. And so I'm excited to be with you today to tell a few stories and shed some light on the Bahamian brain drain.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So thank you for joining us today. And so thank you for that introduction. Can we talk brain drain?
Absolutely. So you gave us a good understanding of what the brain drain is. But as a researcher, the brain drain is basically, as you said, when the brightest and best leave, and the brain drain happens globally. They leave from one location, they go someplace else. The brain drain happens in the US, among cities, persons going from out of the rural communities into the cities, or out of suburban communities into bigger metropolitan areas. But in our context, out of the Bahamian Caribbean context, the brain drain is actually phenomenal because it actually is being recognized and reviewed and examined by global bodies. So even though I'm a native-born Bahamian and I studied the Bahamian brain drain, because as you can see, I am a participant in the Bahamian brain drain. So the brain drain in essence is when Bahamian students and professionals leave the Bahamas and they go someplace else. Some go to the US, some go to Canada, the UK, the UAE, they go all over the world, or should I say we go all over the world.
Thank you for shedding light on the concept, on that social construct, sorry. And so before we dive a little bit deeper into what the brain drain is, if you just joined us, like and share this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel using the links on our page. We need your support to continue these talks. Also, if there's something that you want us to talk about or you think we should be talking about, feel free to let us know. We want to hear from you. So with that, we are going to get into our session. And so you tell us a little bit about yourself, but can you just give us a little bit about your background? Tell us a little bit about your background, Doctor.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I am a native Bahamian. I was born and raised in Nassau. I went to Queens College, St. John's, a little bit of time at the then COB, and then I moved to the US for academics. So I studied in the universities in Ohio. I studied University for Graduate School in Tennessee, and I just earned my PhD in organizational leadership. And in that PhD, what I studied was the Bahamian brain drain and what leaders in the Bahamas can do to mitigate this global crisis. And as I said, you know, it's a crisis that's definitely global because it is not only a problem that we in the Bahamas or even the Caribbean region recognize. It's something that people around the world are recognizing is a problem in the Bahamas specifically and in the wider Caribbean region. Primarily because of all of the global financiers, the IDB, the International Development Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and even the United Nations is saying that the Bahamian brain drain and the Caribbean brain drain is the highest in the entire world per capita. So while there are larger populations of people throughout the world who are moving Sub-Saharan Africa, all over Asia, obviously Americans and Canadians go wherever they go. Their populations are millions of people, especially in the Bahamas, where our population is just below 400,000, makes this a crisis. So we all know somebody that lives someplace else. Deidre, you and I know each other. I live someplace else. I don't live in Nassau any longer. But the brain drain is critical, not because Bahamian students and professionals live someplace else, but the problem in that is that those brains Those persons who have a high capacity to study and examine things, who have the opportunity to develop master's degrees and even PhDs in some instances, that kind of mindset, unfortunately, is actually fueling the economy someplace else. It doesn't benefit the Bahamas typically. And so that's why you call it a drain, similar to what you would say the drain in a kitchen or a bathroom sink. Whatever happens goes and spirals down the drain, and it's hard to retrieve. That's what the brain drain does. People leave, and it's hard to retrieve their expertise. It's hard to retrieve their understanding, their world knowledge, because they live someplace else.
Again, I want to thank you for shedding light on that. And I just want to mention congratulations on obtaining, you mentioned that you recently obtained your PhD. So congratulations to you for that achievement. And you mentioned very important points. And what stood out to me is the first economic impact of the brain drain. You talk about the fact that these human capital, they're contributing to the economy of basically another country. Yeah.
Or other regions globally. So those persons tend to, they move for academic reasons, but when they leave, they take away the capacity for their home country to develop. And as we know, the Bahamas is a developing nation. We are an emerging economy. Years ago, there was the term that was being used widely was third world. But I tend to use the term emerging because we are emerging in so many ways. Technology has given us the opportunity for you and myself to connect. And so as we are an emerging economy, there are ways that we can share ideas absolutely. But unfortunately, the vast amount of Bahamians who have left for academic and professional pursuit will never go back to the country. And that leaves a void of that really critical skill set.
Definitely. And not just the economic impact, but I also think about the social impact as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. As you mentioned, these are the minds who are able to, obtain a certain level of credentials.
Many of them can start businesses. Many of us are academic savvies. Many of us work in technology or other emerging industries. And unfortunately, while it's great to be able to achieve things someplace else, I often wondered, why could I not do X, Y, and Z at home? And so that's one of the reasons why I left.
Thank you for sharing that. And so, what does this mean? We often hear of the concept brain drain, and you definitely, help to explain the construct of what the brain drain is, but its impact, what do you think the impact will likely be?
That's a great question. And so as we all know, in any kind of problem, if the problem or the crisis that you're looking at is economic, if the problem is environmental, there's always some kind of impact. But if the problem is the brain drain, the impact, as we've all seen in the local media in the Bahamas and even in the wider Caribbean region, what happens and what has been talked about for the past 20 plus years is the impact to the healthcare industry, when nurses and midwives and other clinicians leave the Bahamas for hospital systems in the US, in the UK, or even in Canada. But unfortunately, that leaves a void in healthcare. Imagine, if you would, if you've got not just clinicians, nurses, doctors, and clinicians, but suppose you've got engineers, economists, teachers, dentists. Suppose you have persons who are working in any space, people who work in food services. If those persons who have that kind of mindset, that kind of creativity, those persons leave the country, it leaves not only a void in the healthcare sector, it leaves a void in the country's entire infrastructure. And so what you have in that case then is an organization and a country who unfortunately remains in its developing stage and has a challenge, a definite challenge in becoming even more than it could possibly become if those persons had returned. And so that is the problem. A lot of persons unfortunately debate whether the brain drain is real. Well, I say to you very simply, if you've got a population of several million, then maybe you could stand to lose 20,000 people. If you've got a population of 5 or 10 million, you could stand to lose 40,000 people. But if you're a population of below 400,000, try losing 40,000 and see how you develop. I'm a woman of God. I believe in God, and it was my faith that carried me this journey from being a little girl in Chippenham all the way to a PhD. It was nothing but faith. However, obviously hard work also, I should say, but being of faith, if you understand that the Bible reminds us that tithing is 10% of your income. In the Bahamas, we have tithed more than 10% of our economy when it comes to our brain. We've tithed more than 10% of our population. And the numbers are noted in what's happening in the United States. The United States tells you how many Bahamians come over every single year. Canada, the United Kingdom, the United Arab Emirates, and other countries around the world are tracking Bahamians. They know we are excellent. They know we are brilliant. They are tracking our numbers. The problem is we
Wow.
are not tracking where Bahamians go and what we're
Wow.
saying. And as we all say, people may lie, but numbers don't lie.
Mm.
In my study, I had to defend the reason this was important by showing the data.
Stats, that's all that matters.
I had
Show
to
us
show
the
the
stats.
statistics. I had to show the numbers because again, I
Mhm.
studied in a US-based university, and for them, this was not a problem. They were like, well, why is this a problem? This is a problem because I'm a part of the problem. And I no longer wanted to be a part of the problem. I wanted to be a part of the solution.
Wow, that is powerful. I just want to mention Chantel. She says, congratulations, Dr. Wallace-Rencher. Thank you for joining us, Chantel. And again, for those viewing, if you have any comments, please feel free to add your comments. We're going to come to those. But you mentioned some very, very important points. And, the numbers don't lie. And as you would have mentioned, when you look at the bigger countries, maybe you could stand to lose a few.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you could get away with losing a few.
Because even within our region, again, the numbers that I'm quoting here to talk about the high impact of brain drain when it comes to the highest rate in the entire world per capita, those numbers clump the Bahamas into the Caribbean region. But again, in my study, I wanted to go ahead and isolate how important the Bahamian brain drain is to the overall story. And so if you're sharing the narrative, it's so critical that you are sharing not only how important the Bahamas is, because as a native Bahamian, it's better in the Bahamas, right?
Right.
But while it's important to understand what's happening in Jamaica and what's happening in Haiti and what's happening in the Republic of Barbados and other countries in the region, each of those countries, while we share commonality in terms of our cultural heritage, in terms of our philosophies, we do share commonality. But there are very stark differences when it comes to Jamaica and the Bahamas, and Haiti and the Bahamas, and Trinidad and Tobago and the Bahamas. There are stark differences beyond just our geographic location. Only we got Junkanoo, right?
Right.
Everybody else have rice and peas, and we got peas and rice. So while we can talk about food and culture, there are very stark reasons as to why the Bahamian brain drain is so unique, beyond the fact that our population is so tiny. But when it comes to the amount of high-skilled persons who've left the country, and that is the difference. And so Haitians, Jamaicans, persons from the entire region are in constant movement. The mere fact that movement is indicative of who we are as a Caribbean people. You can't think of Caribbean and not think about movement. That's what we do. The way that we speak, the way that we move, the way that we dress, the way that we eat is all about movement. And so we're not talking about why Bahamians should not travel. By any measure, that's not the conversation. The topic here is about the brain drain and how do we address the brain drain?
Definitely. And I mean, you mentioned some very, very important points, and you mentioned the fact that we, even though we share similarities among our different regional neighbors, there's still some complexity involved in the fact that there are differences between each of those islands, island states. And also, for me, being someone in obtaining and moving toward my PhD, and I've already obtained my master's, but I often think about the fact that maybe I could do better. Maybe I could do better elsewhere.
Well, unfortunately, that's one of the reasons why the brain drain happens, right?
Yeah.
So in my study, I didn't only study the Bahamian brain drain, I also studied leadership. And I also wanted to understand what can happen if we don't stem the flow. Again, believe me, as a lifelong student, and you are sharing your desire to press on academically, and I encourage you to do so. But unfortunately, when you're thinking about pressing on academically, because we do have limitations in the Bahamas when it comes to academic pursuit, that is one of the reasons why the brain drain exists. And unfortunately, we can't do anything about that today. But there are things that we can do about the brain drain that I believe can be fixed immediately. And I guess you're wondering why, right?
Definitely, definitely.
So in my study, I interviewed Bahamian public sector leaders, persons who themselves
Could you repeat that? Bahamian
public sector, as we would say, civil servants.
Okay.
I found 20 civil servant leaders, and I wanted to examine, because in my study, in my literature review for my program, I understood that leadership is the crux of everything. Everything sits and rests on leadership. Yeah. And so when you don't have a good leadership and you don't have strong, consistent leadership, then unfortunately, what you have oftentimes in many organizations is a mess. And so I wanted to understand, how can this one single problem be resolved? And so when I asked people simple questions about, did they understand the brain drain and what it meant to them? And did either of them have any family or friends who themselves studied abroad or accepted jobs abroad? Of course, they all said yes. And so it was very clear. But I also asked them, what do you think needs to be done to resolve the Bahamian brain drain? The responses were overwhelming. It took me a deep breath to start sitting there like, okay, hold up, not all at once. But their responses were varied and very diverse. But the most important thing was that many of them obviously were born at the prior to independence. And I gotta tell you, I've earned these gray hair in this PhD program, but I was born in the shadows of independence. And so I had to explain to a lot of my participants in my study how people who were born before independence, 1973, and people who were born immediately after independence, or even during the era of majority rule, and then persons who were born a number of years later, we tend to see things from a different lens. So I only had a Bahamian passport my entire life. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons why I believe I am a brain drainer is nothing to do with my desire for pursuit of education. Some persons may say, well, you know, Bahamians want to study abroad. It's a part of our culture to travel abroad. Florida is right there. Canada is easy. The UK is easily accessible. Well, from my personal story as a brain drainer, my story as a brain drainer did not begin when I left St. John's. Didn't begin when I was in my first year at COB and was thinking about someplace else. I believe, and my mom tells the story, that my story as a brain drainer began at the Moore Lumber Company yard. Old-fashioned Morris on Shirley Street across from St. Matthew's Church. Okay, now you might remember this, but it used to be Moore Lumber Company. And they had the opening of Toyland every December. Now, these days it's now Kelly's, right? Back in the day, when Kelly's, it was John S. George in Palmdale and Moore Lumber Company on Shirley Street. I was a little kid, had to be maybe 3 or 4 years old, wasn't yet even in daycare or in primary school or kindergarten at QC. But my mommy told me the story that the then brother of Spence Finlayson, his name was Mr. Finlayson, Mr. Finlayson was the actual Santa Claus. And because he was a contemporary of my parents, he knew me as a little girl. He called me forward. I leaned forward and he asked me, what do you want for Christmas? In my then 3 or 4 year old voice, I said a passport and a suitcase. Now, in that mind, my mommy tells me the story every time I'm in Nassau. We driving down Shirley Street, heading into town. That's where you ask for a passport and a suitcase. What would make a 3-year-old conceive that life someplace else was not just better, but was possible? I didn't have hardships. I didn't have any struggles or any strain in my life. Some immigrants, I'm certainly do. But this is why I believe the Bahamian experience when it comes to the brain drain is so different. It's so unique. We travel, yes, but whenever I was going to university, people typically asked me in Ohio, how did you get here from the Bahamas to Ohio? And I would tell them quite simply, on a 747 twin engine jet, because that's what Bahamians do, right? we going someplace. But even as a little kid, I knew I was going somewhere and that I needed a way to get there. And so for me, the brain drain is a unique experience. It's unique to my life story. But it was always a very intimate story for me and my immediate family, because my wider family of cousins, within my generation alone, there may be 3, maybe 4 cousins who still live in the Bahamas. That to me is unique. A lot of family members don't have that. A lot of Bahamians don't have that as their story. That's my story. And so for me, I always wanted to know why and what could be done about it. While we have students traveling every August to universities in the UK, in the US, Canada, and wherever else globally, I believe that as you and I are speaking today, that the brain drain can be resolved, not so much with stopping students from traveling, not from stopping professionals from seeking jobs throughout the region or someplace else, but by bringing home those ideas virtually.
Wow, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, how do we prevent, how do we prevent the brain drain? I just want to go to our comments. Thank you again, Chantel, for listening in. Favored Nikisha saying, congratulations, Dr. Wallace-Rencher. I'm going to get back to the comments again, but I want to thank our viewers for listening in. And again, you mentioned some very key, very, very important things, and we want to talk about prevention. How do we prevent the brain drain?
So again, prevention, as we say, an ounce of prevention is better than a little bit of cure, right? So prevention, unfortunately, is not going to stop. You can't stop students from wanting to study. For me to stop anybody from thinking about expanding their knowledge base is completely a crime, I would say. But I believe one of the ways that we need to secure more students on shore is to offer a wider diversity of programs, either at University of the Bahamas, either at BTVI, to offer students more diversity of programs so that they can not only experience home with their family community, but also to expand their brains. When I went to university, unfortunately, I had little family around me. I was blessed in that I was able to be adopted by a local church community, and I still have granny and aunties in Ohio, probably watching right now. But and it was because of that warm embrace that welcomed me in that I was unable to necessarily be truly homesick. I mean, there's nothing like bamboo shack, right? But you can still find home cooking someplace else. But I believe we need to make certain that our students who are desirous of a variety, a wide diversity of academic subjects are able to experience it with their home communities. The second thing that I believe is that we need to create some sort of space where persons like myself are able to not only talk about the brain drain and talk about other topics, but that we're able to share ideas, that we're able to share our expertise. In my study, I was able to reference Fred Propal, who like myself is from Chippenham. And when I was talking to participants in my study, many of them were saying, oh, well, for Fred Propal, redesign the PHA hospital. And while that's amazing, the fact that he would actually redesign the hospital where he was born, where I was born, improving the quality of healthcare delivery in the entire country is amazing that anyone could do that. But that right there is a perfect example of what I believe is social remittance. So remittance, typically people think of remittance and it's typically financial. So we all know MoneyGram, we all know Cash App, we all know Western Union. Everybody who has been off to school for even a week, everybody's mummy been to the bank to wire you if only $10 so that you could survive someplace else. But that's called financial remittance. I believe that because financial remittance is so critical to the economies of the entire Caribbean region, and it is not as important to the Bahamian economy, means that Bahamians have demonstrated that we understand the importance of social remittance. So Fred Propal demonstrated social remittance by designing a hospital. He lent his expertise. I don't believe he bought this deal. I don't think he purchased or paid for the manpower, but he did send his expertise in the design. I myself have sent home templates and documents of just spreadsheets that I work on every single day. Maybe I dust it off and send it back home to a cousin or a friend, or to make certain that they are having an easier experience, things that I do blindly without even thinking about it. I can send home ideas. You and I having this discussion is a form of social remittance. We're sharing ideas and sharing expertise, making certain that somebody else can glean something from this exchange. There needs to be a lot more opportunities for social remittance in the Bahamas. There needs to be opportunities for persons not just to move back home and begin life anew. Some persons can, but I believe there needs to be more opportunities for persons to share ideas, share expertise, sit on panels, be able to be a decision maker. There has to be opportunities beyond the private sector, where typically persons who go after school typically come back to the Bahamas, and they always, or not always, but they typically land in the private sector. There needs to be more opportunities to allow that perspective to go into the public sector, because the public sector, as you know, that is where policies and programs on a national scale are developed, implemented, and governed. The private sector, although way wealthier in terms of its economic capacity, it's the public sector where change really comes from. Change comes only when leaders in that sector put their minds together, they develop, they implement, and they govern processes on a national scale, and then, and only then, can a country change.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing some of those ideas, some of those ways in which we kind of can prevent brain drain and prevent this from happening. Because as you would have mentioned, we have every cycle, every August is going to be a new group of students that are going to be traveling to pursue their programs in another country. And so the thought is, are they going to return after they would have obtained these credentials? Are they going to return home and add to the body, add to our human capital, add to our workforce? Are they going to return? And so these are important. This is important for us really to consider and think about after you would have put yourself forward to invest in yourself. And of course, it's not, even if you may receive some type of scholarship, first and foremost, it requires discipline. It's not easy. Financially, it can be draining. And for me, and for you, even at the PhD level, it is a huge sacrifice. So in making the decision to pursue these programs and pursue these credentials, you kind of wonder, after I would have obtained all these things, is it going to be appreciated? Am I going to receive my worth?
And I think that there needs to also be an opportunity for persons to find opportunities. You know, one of the things in my study that I found was very interesting was many of the persons discussed for a need for a national development program. And so we've all heard of a national development program, and successive administrations have published it. It's been published, it's all over the internet. In my research, I found like 8 different iterations of probably the same plan. And while they're all well thought out, well written, well done, what I haven't seen is an opportunity to talk about beyond a 5-year plan. I haven't seen any 20-year plans. I haven't seen plans to talk about how do you bring your students back and how do you prepare for where you aren't even just yet. So I work for state government in the state of Tennessee. I'm the change manager for the state of Tennessee. And one of the things that we typically do on a quarterly basis, and I actually, because I have a master's degree with a concentration in strategy, and one of my jobs in that capacity is to support the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer, in developing our roadmap. Where are we going to be this time 5 years from now? And so how do we help the Department of Health, the Department of Education, the Department of Transportation? How do we help all of those agencies who come to us for technology solutions? How do we help them to recognize what they need to have done? So case in point, during the pandemic, the population of the Bahamas increased. There was an explosion, birth explosion. No wonder people had no place to go. So you have a population explosion. So for babies who were born at the end of 2020, by 2025, we had 10 children born, just a small number of babies born in 2020. In 2025, August, September, we need to have 10 seats for kindergartners. Makes sense, right? But we also need 2 or 3 pediatricians because they're going to need immunizations to go to school. We also need 2 or 3 dentists because they will need dental appointments. We also need 2 or 3, if not more, daycares within the next 3 years, because that's where they will need to be. And so when you're thinking about a national plan, you don't begin the plan where you currently are without imagining where you will need to be in at least 5 to 10 to 20 years. And so if you've got X number of students, again, 10 students who are leaving in the month of July or August or early September for universities in Canada, going to the UK or wherever they're going, why not understand what they plan on studying? And if you've given their parents tuition or a grant or a loan towards that tuition, some are going to come home. Some may not, but those who are coming back, let's plan a job for them before they even graduate. Novel thought, right? I had internships before I finished off undergraduate. I had an internship with a major organization. They reached out, said, hey, we've got an opportunity. Do you want to study? Do you want to learn from us while you're finishing off your degree? Who would say no? I haven't seen that many programs within the Bahamian public sector that reaches out to our high schoolers, our recent graduates from high school, or even our recent or soon to be university students. Why are students knocking down doors and saying, you know what, why am I going to go home if there's no job for me? Now, for persons who are saying, oh, you live in the States, you don't know, I can confirm I left the United States before I earned a master's degree and was in Nassau for almost 18 months. So when you have a vicious cycle of persons saying, listen, I have a degree, I have job experience, but unfortunately what's happening is here, I can't find a job. Now, again, this was before LinkedIn. This is before you could go on Indeed and find jobs. This was a number of years ago, but I do hear students having the same problem.
But Dr. Michelle, can we also talk about those persons who are able to find a job? They do find a job, but they're not compensated for their credentials. So on one end, you may have persons, they may not be able to find work, but you do have persons who do, but their credentials are recognized.
Absolutely.
And many persons in that category.
And it is true. Again, that goes again towards national planning. You know, in my study, again, I had a number of persons tell me, well, you know, those of you who left the Bahamas in the 80s and the early 90s, you did not leave with the same level of national pride and national passion that persons who may have left in the 50s and 60s. And so while I can agree, because I wasn't born in the 1960s, and so I don't know what it felt like to be in the US or in Canada or in the UK and be studying towards a plan to return to an emerging nation. I was born into a nation. And so our experiences are very different. But to your point, in terms of those students who may not have been able to find gainful employment, and of course, we all know the US and Canada and the UK and even the UAE, the compensation level is way different. The ability to embrace opportunities where you have chances and more opportunities to advance quicker, it definitely is, it's a different environment. But in that environment, I simply say that is why it comes down to our leaders to demonstrate opportunities for students to say, listen, you're coming home, not just to make yourself wealthy. Had I been told when I returned home that I would have an opportunity, maybe, okay, not 18 months, maybe it might have been by year 2, that I would have had an opportunity to be a nation builder, I may have stayed. Now, every student is different, every professional is unique, but I do believe the persons who returned to the Bahamas during the majority rule era, many of them experienced, again, the chance to go into new industries that did not exist. They had the chance to go into a door, sit at a desk, walk into an industry that their parents and the predecessors, their ancestors would have never been able to do. Persons like myself chose to go into disciplines because we didn't even think about national development. And I think that is part of the conversation also. If students are studying astrophysics, and they want to be an astrophysicist, at the end of the day, is that a job in the Bahamas? Is it a job even in your region? Now, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm simply saying maybe we need to make certain that our leaders are making certain that they are preparing such a roadmap so that students find their place in the national plan, and they say, listen, I want to be that over there. It doesn't exist today, but that's where I want to be today. And so if I study and get a master's or even a bachelor's degree, once I return home, is there space for me? And I think we need to talk about national development. I think there needs to be a place for students, young people, professionals, because we're not all going to be young. Maybe we're in our 30s and 40s, even 50s, and we say, you know what? I've lived away for a period of time and I want to come back home. Is there space for me? Who wants to be told that you're overqualified at home? It's one thing if you're overqualified someplace else, but nobody wants the feeling that you're not wanted and that your expertise will not be embraced.
Yeah, definitely. That is a conversation to be had, being told that you're overqualified. Wow. So I want to go back to the comments. Favorite Nikisha is asking if you can comment on succession planning that will open doors for bright minds to return.
Yeah.
Thank you, June Ferguson. Thank you for joining us. But Favorite Nikisha wants you to comment on the succession planning.
Absolutely. And that is a key component, as you said, recognizing that we are human capital, recognizing that that the talent of the organization are its people. And so when you have an organization like in the public sector, unfortunately, we do have a cap on the years of service, which is 65, that's been published. But there are some industries or some sectors of the public sector where you have people are being retired early, accepting the package, as they would say, and oftentimes there is little space or little opportunity to backfill those roles. I do understand that within our utilities, we typically have a huge crisis when you have a large group of persons being retired at the same time and little succession planning being done at the earlier side of their careers. And maybe they get 62 or 63 or 64 years old and they've got, a bank of 18 months of vacation and then they just disappear. Unfortunately, as a country, we have not done a really good job of passing the baton. And in our DNA as a country, we did have that built initially. 50 years ago, we all called Pinland Black Moses, regardless of where you stand on the political divide. I was an infant, I was a baby when independence happened. I remember, and even in modern times, people say, Black Pinland. I've seen the Black Moses. I've seen the Black Moses documentary, and it's an amazing narrative. But I have a question of, if we're talking about succession planning, then I want to ask the question, and where is Joshua? Joshua is that person in Joshua 1 that says, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now is the time for Joshua and the generation to stand up, rise up, and do what I told you to do. Not be afraid, and because I will not withhold anything from you. And so as a people, as we embrace, we're almost to 50 years, we're almost at our 50th anniversary of independence. I believe the time has come to ask the question, not about succession planning, not about developing our national plan, being strategic in our plan, but we must have to ask the question, and where is Joshua?
Where's Joshua? Where is Joshua?
Joshua,
where are you?
And because I believe in inclusion, he may not be a dude. Just saying.
Hey,
just saying.
Right. That's so true.
He may have lashes and cute lipstick.
Hey.
Just saying.
All right. So going back to our comments, Dr. Vivian, you gained some new credentials. Welcome, Vivian Pitter. She's one of our longtime viewers. She's from Jamaica. Vivian, I'd really like to hear about your view on brain drain. If you can comment, we'd love to hear how you feel about brain drain in Jamaica. But thank you, Vivian. It's been a while, Dr. Vivian. But definitely, where's Joshua?
I don't know.
Our sister Joshua, where are they?
Maybe it's Josette. I don't know.
Josette,
but we know now is the time, right? Now is the time. Now is the appropriate time.
Definitely. And so, as we talked about succession planning and moving forward, what is government's role in and society's role in kind of fueling this brain drain? Do we have push and pull factors and all of these things going on? What pushes our best and brightest to
And I think that there are a number of factors going on. Like you said, there are push and pull factors. And for those of you who are new to the discussion of the brain drain, the push factor is what pushes something to occur. The pull factor when it comes to the brain drain, and the pull factor is what actually draws our students away from Bahamian shores to someplace else. And Dr. Vivian, being in Jamaica, she obviously has a lot of experience when it comes to what's happening down in UE. And so while Bahamian students tend to study at UE for medicine, I would offer that another opportunity that the Bahamas government, its politicians and its public sector leaders have to stem the flow of brain drain is, as I understand, is to keep it in the region. Mia Motley says, let's be strategic. Let's be mindful of what we're going to do. Keep that money, keep that brain in the region. And so why not stop allowing all of our students, not so much stopping them, because you really can't stop somebody from studying elsewhere. But I would offer that since we do offer scholarships to the University of the West Indies for medicine, why not offer some University of West Indies scholarships for STEM subjects? My father studied at the University of the West Indies in Trinidad. My godfather studied at UE in Trinidad also for architecture. I don't know that many students who are leaving Nassau and Grand Bahama and Abaco and Exuma and heading to Trinidad to study. They get oil refineries down there, yes, they do, but they also do have excellent engineering programs. We have a BAMC program in Andros, and there are a lot of students studying at BAMC, but why not also send them to Trinidad to get a master's degree in agronomy that is not currently being offered at BAMC? So BAMC offers degrees in agriculture, but there is no agronomy. And so that is the science of agriculture. And since we want to talk about sustaining our economy, making certain that we have food sustainability, we need to understand the science beyond just planting seeds in the ground. And so I say, let's go ahead and plant some seeds, some financial seeds, to make certain that those students who are desirous of studying globally just decide to study regionally. There's a reason why the brain drain in certain countries of the world doesn't exist. Primarily because those students have opportunities regionally, and by the time they are getting ready to graduate, not when they cross the stage and then cap and gown and they having photographs with the mummy and the Grammy and the Gaudi, give them a job opportunity before they graduate so that they have something to walk for. They're walking towards a check. If you make that check interesting and definitely a sizable amount, and they understand the importance of their role in national development. And I think that's what's missing. If somebody had offered me a job 20 years ago, I would have said, okay, what's in it for me? You can't sell the fact that you're going to offer them $10,000 or $20,000 less than what's being offered in the US. You must sell something that's even more valuable, which is national pride, an opportunity to serve your country, an opportunity to be a part of your
wow, that
needs to be
sold. Impactful.
That needs to be sold.
Wow, yeah.
You can't compete with Google. You don't have enough money in the treasury to compete with Oracle. We can't compete with them. You can't compete with Nike. You can't. But what you can offer them with Oracle and Google and all the Big 10 companies and all the Fortune 100 in the US, what you can offer them is what they cannot get in Tennessee or in the UK or in Canada or anywhere in the US. That means being a part of the foundation so that 10 years from now, they are not just being a worker. They're not just talent. They next in line to lead. And so that message can only come from a true leader. And Miles Monroe, our Bahamian theologian, told us that everyone has the capacity to lead. We're just waiting for an opportunity to walk into our latent. Again, latent. It's been held back from us. And so if you are Joshua or Josette, now is the time to rise up and take your rightful place. Now again.
And take your rightful place.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Definitely. That's impactful. And you mentioned the fact that, no, you're not going to be able to compete with those maybe Fortune 500 companies, and can't compete in that way. But then one way that you can compete in is selling that national pride, the opportunity to further lead your country, build your country, be a nation builder.
To get to the next level. And again, as we are, I believe, the jewel of the region. There's a reason why, and Doctor on the call, I'm not giving any slight to Jamaica, but we all know it's better in the Bahamas, right? And so at the end of the day, there's a reason why it's definitely been trademarked. Not only is it a trademark for our tourism industry, but anywhere that you want to go through any of our 700 islands and keys, there's nothing on earth that's beyond it. However, our young people, our young professionals are not being given opportunities to explore and to examine and to bring back their technology, bring back the emerging skill set, to make certain that, you know what, I'm going to be at the forefront of this.
But how can we be great, as we would have mentioned before, if our minds, our human capital, and then all of these talents, these skills, these abilities are being capitalized in other regions, in other countries? How can we be great? How can we progress as a nation when our best and brightest aren't staying?
I think it's definitely a seesaw way of looking at things. There are wins and there are losses in the conversation. I think to say that all of our brightest and best have left is
definitely not. No, definitely not.
Because you live in the Bahamas, so
definitely,
let's be clear, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Some
of them. We're not saying.
To me, as in my humble opinion and my assessment, far too many were allowed to leave.
But I'm tempted, Dr. Michelle. If I'm going to be real, I'm going to be honest. I'm tempted because I know that my qualifications is not appreciated. It is not appreciated. You have someone moving from, you're obtaining these different credentials, you're making the sacrifice. This is a huge sacrifice to move from, I have my master's now, I'm moving from my master's into my PhD, making the sacrifice to pursue these programs. And I'm questioning, I'm trying to figure out, should I continue? Can I complete this program if I'm not going to be paid? I'm not even being paid for my master's degree.
I think having finished mine, I think on the other side of that is the thought of, but why are you pursuing it in the first beginning? What was the reason you pursued it? Yeah. What was the reason? I mean, if you only pursue something out of financial gain.
That's impactful. I feel that.
Then you really didn't pursue it for the right reason.
Wow.
But if you pursue something, it should be out of the perspective of saying, if I don't do this, then what will happen? So in my study, I had a unique experience in that we had to not only on a weekly basis understand our core curriculum, but we were also challenged biblically. We were challenged spiritually in my program, and they didn't just give us our daily devotion to say, "Oh,
can you share what program is it? What kind of program is this?"
I'm not on
Can you share? You mind sharing?
I'm not on their payroll, so I can't.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Now, if they want to pay to advertise, just saying, right? But they understood. But they definitely gave us a challenge, a clarion call to say, listen, how does this program benefit the kingdom?
Wow.
And it was for me, again, studying the Bible wasn't a problem. It was about saying, okay, but I'm not in ministry. I attend church, I worship, I tithe, I offer, but how does what I'm studying impact the kingdom? And after a little bit of serious deep thought, a lot of prayer, a little bit of fasting, I came to the conclusion that there were 3 biblical champions who my study sat firmly on. And the first one was Esther, because I wanted to understand what could happen. Actually, out of order there. The first one was Nehemiah, because Nehemiah built the wall. We all went to Sunday school. He built the wall.
Right.
But it's also important to understand that Nehemiah stepped outside of his comfort zone. He went way out of his comfort zone, way out of his skill set to do something that he believed was going to fortify his entire community.
Wow.
And so I believed that by leaving technology, which is my first love and passion, I'm an engineer by profession. I wanted to leave engineering. I'm going to study a little bit of divinity, which was so different for me. But I wanted to understand how could the foundation of the Bahamas, and I believe that while the population of the Bahamas is not in question, the Bahamas is never going to leave the planet anytime soon. But I do believe that if the brightest and best continue to leave at the current rate, our ability to sustain ourselves as an economy, our ability to become an emerging society, an emerging economy is going to be hampered because so many of our excellent, brightest and best have left and continue to leave every single day, every single month. And because our population is way less than any other country in the Caribbean region, we are that much more impacted. I also believe that the story of Esther was critical to my study because Esther said, what's going to happen if I don't do this? If I don't speak up, who will speak up? If not me, then when?
Mm.
If not me, then when? Then
Then-
how is this going to fix? How is this
Mm.
situation going to
Wow.
resolve itself? So I wanted to understand and examine it from a deeper angle.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
then again, as I mentioned to you, I grew up in the world of calling Prime Minister Pindling, the late Prime Minister Lyndon Pindling, Black Moses.
Like Moses.
And so for me, Joshua is the dude, right? Joshua was like, me? For real though?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
just a scout. I'm a girl from
Mm.
Chippendale. Surely you don't expect me to stand on this platform, on this stage and say what's going to happen. But every time I try to stop the program, and my family can tell you, I try to stop the program many times. It was like, this happened, the pandemic hit. And so in the midst of the pandemic, I am working full time. I have a husband. I have children who are school age with homework, and they were doing virtual school. And then my office was doing this and doing that. And I'm being called upon because I call myself a change agent. And my title at work is that of a change manager. And technology does not stop. We work 24/7. It's always something coming,
Yeah,
something popping up.
definitely. Yeah.
So
Yep.
every time I tried to stop, I was given the call, but I told you you was going to do this thing. And I told you not to be afraid. And I told you you're going to get the victory in this situation.
Yeah.
And so when I was able to defend and stand flat-footed and say, listen, if I don't fix this, who's going to fix this? If I don't examine this, who's going to examine it? And if I don't give some really tangible, heartfelt, tangible, meaningful solutions to this problem, I have a nephew in the Bahamas and who is just 6. In 15 years, where's he going? In 15 years, where's he going to be? So I wanted to say, not stop him from going to the UK or the US or Canada. I have so many cousins all over the world. And while we talk about the US as proximity, talk about Canada being proximity, the UK is a part of our cultural identity, part of our political identity. I saw online the amount of Bahamians who went to Expo 2020 in the UAE this past spring. And while I was filled with immense pride and joy seeing all those Bahamians doing all those amazing things, I had to stop and notice the incremental pictures. I saw those 10 Bahamian pilots. And my heart was like, wait a minute. What happened to Bahamas Air? What happened to Western Air? What happened to Millionaire? All those airlines that are based in the Bahamas. What happened to Air Jamaica? What happened to the VI? But all of those pilots chose to fly planes in the Arab Emirates. Now, that's a wonderful thing for them. I think it's a wonderful opportunity. Now, they may choose to go home at some point in time, but my point was just simply this. If we continue to build economies elsewhere, if we continue to build organizations elsewhere, and please believe me, when you are a native-born Bahamian, organizations know us. They know we walk in excellence. They know we've got a mouth full of words. They know we know how to express ourselves. They know that we are able to do amazing things. We know how to move a mountain because we are from a little tiny place on a map. And because we're from a little small place on a map, we are from just below. They only notice us in hurricane season, right? Or when they want to go on vacation. But I always wondered, if somebody has $10 million, are they going to spend $1 million on vacation? No. Who spends 10% of your net worth on vacation? But that's all they know us for until it's a problem in the organization. And they say, oh, but aren't you from the Bahamas? Where should I go on my vacation? Ain't nobody ever tell me they go into the Bahamas to sign a contract. Ain't nobody ever tell me we go into the Bahamas to go ahead and seal the deal. They go on vacation though. Now, again, I ain't here to solve the vacation issue. I'm not against tourism. That's our bread and butter. But I work in technology. And as a technologist, I firmly believe there's always a solution to every and any problem. I believe that we need leaders in the Bahamas who recognize that every single day, week, month, and year, we are allowing our brightest and best to leave, get amazing global education, and we have failed to bring them back. We have failed to create a bridge. The same way that Ghana created the year of return, where they encouraged persons who are of African origination to come back to Ghana in 2020 and 2021. We need to do the same. We need to bring our Bahamians back on soil. We need to create partnerships. We need to create opportunities for persons to say, listen, I got that. I know how to do that. We got agriculturalists in the US who studied at agricultural A&M universities, but we got BAMC. Now, they don't all want to come and run the show. Some of them want to go ahead and be a guest lecturer. Some of them may want to go ahead and help you sign a contract or read a contract and find the loopholes that maybe you have missed. Give us an opportunity, and I promise you, we ain't gonna never let you down. But until you make that opportunity, until that space comes available, we're gonna continue to spin our wheels, and we're gonna be 50, and then 51, and then 60, and then 70 years old. It is my desire that by the time we turn 60 years old, we don't have the same problems that we had at turning 50. Now, as a person who is just turned 50, I can confirm that when you are 50, there are some things about your life when you were 20 and 30 and 40 that you don't stress about. You've learned some life lessons and you don't even mind what people have to say any longer. Now, when you turn 80, I don't know, because I'm not 80 just yet. But at 50, as a country turns 50, she has made some mistakes and some missteps along the way. When she turns 50, she knows what she's good at. At 50, she is excellent at some things. But at 50, she is still young enough to learn some new tricks. But she needs to be open and receptive to those lessons.
Definitely. And if we have that age on us as a country and we're not making the right moves and we haven't learned any lessons or any growing pains, then that's an issue. We're not making progress.
We have learned some lessons, but we are still at the place where we're still sensitive about learning. You're still sensitive, you're still itchy and scratching on it. But when you're comfortable in your skin, you don't mind. You're like, this drop off okay.
Okay.
It's like 50, right?
I'm 50.
I'm 50.
Right.
So I'll tell anybody, this is what she looks like at 50.
Hey.
When you 50
looks like.
50 looks. I was born in her shadow. I don't even think I was even talking when she was born. And so in the back of my mind, I've always had a relationship with my country, not just because that's where I born, where my navel string is buried in Chippenham. Because we're the same age, I look at my life and I'm thinking, wow, when I was 21, like, that was messy. When I was 30, like, you know what? Yeah, I was in my stride and I was walking into offices and I couldn't tell me nothing, right?
No.
But when you're 50, you bold enough to say on the internet, I started from the bottom, now I hear. Exactly, right? I hear. And I think until we get to that level of bravado as a country to say, listen, all of y'all who's someplace else, what can you do for me? And be brave enough and bold enough to ask Bahamians and task us until you tell us, we need you. You don't need my money for when I travel and stay at Atlantis. That ain't what you need me for. You need us to do some things that we cannot even imagine. And until we do that, until that occurs, until we as a country step into our ownness and we say, listen, I need some economists.
Yes.
And I don't know, you ain't gonna leave your Wall Street job to go work on Shirley Street. However, there's a committee that I need some voices on.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to offer us, give me 2 hours of your life?
Yeah.
That's Netflix, man. That's some Netflix time, right? Yeah. We can all do that. And so there are opportunities for us to do something, but make the opportunity available. Make it open and make it so that we are receptive to say yes. All we can say is yes. I remember that my daddy and my mommy and other people in my immediate family who went abroad, and when they came home, they were in the midst and they were challenged with starting a new country. Many of them were the first person in their entire family, yes, but they were the first person in the world to do something. Wouldn't that be cool if you could be the first person in the world to be a part of an emerging economy and you could do X, Y, you could read a contract, not write it, not fund it, just read it. Just read it and redline it and send it back. Wouldn't that be the coolest thing, to sit on a panel, to lecture, to offer courses at the University of the Bahamas, be a guest lecturer virtually. We can all spend 2 hours. We can all create a slide deck and send it virtually. and say, listen, ask me a question and I'm here. I'm here for it. There are many students at every single school in the Bahamas who need someone to interview, if not a virtual interview, to just say, ma'am, sir, here are my questions. Can you help me study something? Can you help me do my school project?
Yes.
There has to be something that we can do. And again, whether it's Nehemiah, Esther, or Joshua, or a combination thereof, I got my strength in my academic program, and I am still fueled by their courage and their tenacity to say, you know what, I'm going to fix my country. And so if it takes one conversation at a time, this juvenile girl is on a mission.
Hey.
I on a mission because I want to make certain that every single Bahamian who live in the wider diaspora has or feels as if they have something to share, something to bring to the table. Most people, I believe, if you've been gone for a long period of time, you got a mommy or your auntie or your grandma or your godly. We go home for funerals. We go home for family reunions. If you still even have those things. We enjoy Bamboo Shack, sure. That's the sensory kind of stuff of life.
Yeah.
But where is our opportunity to serve? And people,
what have you done for me lately?
Right? Right? There has to be some of that. We got to be able to serve. And if you don't give us a chance to serve, what you've done is negate on our Bahamianness. And we get pride. Trust and believe. You want to see Bahamian pride?
Definitely.
You want to see Bahamian pride?
Yeah, definitely.
That's somebody win a race.
Oh, yeah.
Those of us who ain't never run a race since junior high. All of us got on our shirt and waving our flag. Knowing that we don't run nothing except our mouth.
Okay. That's right.
But so Bahamian pride got to be more than just wearing a t-shirt, right?
Yes.
Give us a chance to serve. Give us a chance to operate in that space.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for mentioning that. It's very impactful. You know, what are we doing? What service are we offering? Not just lip service, but what are we doing? Exactly. So very, very important. And so we talked about, you know, the brain drain in the Bahamas, and we look to our neighbors. Dr. Vivian, if she's still here, we look to our neighbors, our regional neighbors, and you know, what about the Greater Caribbean, the brain drain in the Greater Caribbean? Yeah. As
I mentioned earlier, the Caribbean brain drain, it's being recognized by the United Nations, the IDB, the IMF. All of these global financiers and global entities are recognizing the Caribbean brain drain. And again, they lump us all in the Caribbean because that's where we are geographically. And it's important because, again, we're talking about primarily the loss to the healthcare systems of the region. But it's not just healthcare workers who are leaving the Caribbean region. We've got engineers, we've got teachers, we've got scientists, we've got economists and business persons, and just typical students and typical business persons who are just leaving industry. And so the reason why this is important is because those global financiers, the IDB, the International Development Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the Inter-American Development Bank, those financiers are looking at us primarily because they give us money or they lend us money. The reason this is important is because when you go to the bank, a typical commercial bank, if it's Scotia, RBC, they want to understand your debt ratio. So your debt ratio is how much debt you currently own or have and how much your earning capacity is. They weigh the odds, they give you an interest rate for your loan. Those global financiers do the same thing. Only difference is their equation includes not just your earning potential as a country. They look at the persons who are themselves the earners of your country. They're looking at your high school leavers. And so when they give you a 30-year loan, I'm 50. That's not my loan. I'll be 80 when it's paid off. That's not my loan. My nephew who's 6, that's his loan. When the time comes to go ahead and pay that balloon payment, he's gonna be 36 years old. That's his loan. Now, how much money, how his earning potential is determined by how well he does in BGCSE. That's the overall, that's the equation. So when we have high school leavers who unfortunately are not able to gain A's and B's at the BGCSE level, what happens is that those students who are the high academic achievers, their parents, just like my parents, send them overseas. Until we bring those students back with meaningful jobs that are going to build the economy, what you have is a society of persons who are building and basically obtaining debt, massive amounts of loans from global financiers who don't care. They've said it for the past 20, 30 years. The Bahamas must diversify its economy. People here talk about diversifying the economy. Their first statement is, we got to get rid of tourism, and we must then bring in other industries. While that's important, regardless of your industry, you need to make certain that your high school leavers have a higher level of capacity to be able to earn. And when you have high school leavers, if the great majority, according to the Ministry of Education, if the great majority of them are leaving the country, who are high school leavers, who are high academic achievers, are from private school systems, which you're looking at to pay off that loan, are public school kids, government schools. And so if the great majority of them are only getting B's and C's and lower, their earning potential is lower. It's a simple equation. It's a whole lot of words, but the bottom line is we got to do better. We got to make certain that our high school leavers who are staying in the country have jobs. And the best way, as Nikisha says, succession planning is a key. Stop waiting for kids or young persons to be 18 and 20, leaving high school 2 or 3 years later and looking for a job. You got to get them introduced to the public sector at 9th grade. That may sound a little bizarre, right? But other countries around the world do it. And in Jamaica, they introduce their public sector kids, the kids who coming out of government school, they tell them about the public sector as early as 9th grade. When I was in school, we used to have junior achievement. Tells you about industry, tells you about the working world, you earn business skills. That probably still exists. But what I'm suggesting is we need to have a succession plan and a youth branch that work side by side. And so as we have students leaving high school and persons who are in the public sector who have been there for a number of years, put them together, link them up. Each one teach one is so very simple. So rather than having persons in the private sector leading junior achievement, make it be public sector. BEC, Badelco, or BTC, Ministry of Works, Water and Surge, as we like to say, the Ministry of Health. Every single public sector agency and organization and ministry needs to adopt a school in the country. That's our future. Those young people who are 10 and 12 and 15 and 16, you are inheriting debt. Why not give them an easy access route to a job? It's not going to pay them $19 million because my job don't pay me $19 million. However, they're going to earn the ability to be a part of the country. They're going to be a part of national development. They will be gainfully employed. They can take care of national debt, take care of their homes, take care of their families and themselves. And guess what? There's no problem when it comes to joblessness. We all working. So yes, some persons are going to go into the tourism sector, but why not build up the public sector? Those low-level, entry-level jobs, bring in those 9th graders, introduce them on a weekly basis in the summer months. This is now May. They should be going to a introduction job and in the civil service all June. Just show them all the cool jobs, because as far as, if you ask me, making money is cool.
Yeah.
Making money is cool. At the end of the day, making money is cool. And so when you introduce young people at 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, by the time they are a high school leaver, by the time they are in 12th grade, getting ready for their prom, they are introduced. They have an understanding of the public sector. If they go off to school, okay. If they go to UB or BTVI or BAMC, awesome. But if they are going to be at home, if they're staying in the country, they have no job experience other than what's available to them, then give them experience, give them job skills. Start them off early so that by the time they are ready for a job, the job is theirs. They built up relationships, they understand the corporate culture, they understand the organizational culture, and most importantly, it gives them a chance to build society. What better way to build your nation, to get to the next 60 years, the next 100 years, to know that you've got young people who are waiting in the wings, and succession planning is easy because they've been there for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. They're ready to step
And
into
they've already got the training and all that. Yeah,
absolutely. Train them. Let's train them.
Definitely. So we are now going to introduce a new segment to our sessions called the Fast Talk segment. And, we're going to give you 60 seconds to answer each of these questions. So first one, why aren't some of our best and brightest minds attracted to staying home after they complete their studies?
They're not necessarily recognizing what they can do if they go. And I think there's little opportunity for them to recognize it. It has to be a twofold thing. Government and families need to merge together and get on the same page.
How can our national leaders convince our skillful workforce to stay?
Have a plan that is definitely strategic, making certain that we're looking 10 and 15 and 20 years down the road, making certain that young people who are currently in universities abroad, who are working abroad under the age of 25, under 40, are a part of the plan, and tell them how they can help and how they can support.
And what factors led you to build your professional career outside of your country?
I think I wanted to go into areas and spaces that weren't available for me. My first degree is in engineering. My second degree is in strategy. And now I've got a PhD in organizational leadership. None of those would have been available to me in the Bahamas. But I definitely did say that my parents pushed me into those environments. And I have to tell you, I believe, and probably this is going to be very controversial, but in the Bahamas, our national anthem, I believe, told me to go.
Okay.
The national anthem says, "Be excellent and show the world the manner of your bearing." Show them what you're working with.
Okay, that's showing what we're working with.
But it didn't say come back. Just saying.
Thank you for participating in our Fast Talk segment. And so as we wind down to the end of our session, is there any additional comments you would like to add?
I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
So I studied motivation for the brain drain, for the Bahamian brain drain. And I'd like to know what motivates you.
What motivates me to stay?
What motivates you in general?
Oh, in general?
How do you get up and do this every day?
How do I get up and do this every day? I think it's something that is innate. It's just something that comes natural to me. I like what I do. And so because I like what I do, and I feel passionate about it, and I feel that there's purpose behind it that keeps me going. I don't always get the support or, all of those good things. And, you don't have those people behind you cheering you on. But I think my motivation factor is internal. I don't need a whole crowd of people telling me what I'm doing is great. I know what I'm doing is great, and I know what I'm doing is purposeful. And so that is enough to motivate me to keep going, because I know at the end of the day, I'm doing something that I feel that I'm walking in my purpose. So I hope that
it does. It does. What you just described is called self-actualization. It's a fancy word for I do me because I can't do anybody else.
Powerful.
It's just a fancy word for just saying, you know what, this is me, and I'm going to keep doing me, and because I don't do anybody else very well, right?
No, I don't do other people too well. No.
Yeah. So it's called self-actualization.
Hey, Maslow.
Yeah. And for those of you who are new to that term, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. To the very bottom are our innate needs, so that we all have a need for food. We need food, clear water, we need safety. We all need a certain level of mental stability. But the very top of the pyramid is called self-actualization. And there are people who are driven by some innate ability to do something, and they do it again and again, and until they get that itch scratched. And that's exactly what you have defined.
Well, nobody ever asked me that, so thank you for asking me that question. I normally ask the questions. Thank you.
And you know what? And that's okay, because I studied motivation, and my next thing is I want to examine the motivation of persons in my immediate family who themselves have chosen to migrate. And I want to know why, because we're all different. We are in in the faith ministries, some persons are economists, some persons are in the financial sector, some persons are in the healthcare sector, some people are engineers, others work in public sector and private sector. You've got educators, some persons in the insurance industry. We have a variety of skills, and I am just beyond curious to say why and what motivates these people who are from the same DNA. We all get, again, we all get different parents, but we all stem from one lady. And I would like to know why her great-grandchildren are all so fueled to do some amazing things. And I'm just curious enough to believe that they're gonna all answer my question of what motivates you.
Sounds good, and we would love to hear that. We will invite you. You're our friend now, and we want to hear. We want to talk about these motivations. We need is very important. You know, what really motivates people to do the things that they do. You know, so,
and to do it again and again and again.
Yeah,
if they're not doing one thing, they're not doing. It's not a hit and miss. They're being very repetitive. They keep pushing. So
definitely
advanced degrees, professional pursuit, they're consistently pursuing very different paths, and they're extremely persistent in their pursuit. And
even in the face of challenges.
In the face of COVID, many of us remember Y2K.
Wow.
And now we survived the pandemic. And so to me, as you mentioned, you are considering a PhD.
I'm doing my PhD. I'm actually doing. I'm in my PhD.
You're actually pursuing it. You're pursuing a PhD. I gotta tell you, anybody that's not pursuing something, then have to be academic.
Yeah.
Maybe you are pursuing the best price of tuna in the grocery store.
Yeah.
Maybe that's your pursuit. Maybe you're looking for who else the best price of seedless grain.
Definitely.
Whatever is your pursuit, I offer you this. If you survived Y2K and you survived the pandemic, surely, what you can do? I mean, think about it. What is there left for Y2K to the pandemic? 20 years of just life has just been interesting, right? But for me, as we go on, the best way for us to survive and to keep thriving is to continue to talk.
Hey, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Michelle. We enjoyed your company today and sharing on this topic, brain drain. And so, like I said, you are our friend. You are welcome back anytime. Is there a page you would like to share?
Pardon?
Is there a page you would like to share?
Well,
if not, that's okay.
You know what I would say? You know what? Take Joshua 1.
All right.
Joshua 1 and 9. Joshua 1. Do not be afraid.
Okay. All right, Dr. Michelle.
Do not be afraid.
Leaving us with some inspiration, some spiritual inspiration.
Do not be afraid. Continue to do whatever he tells you to do. Go ahead and pursue. Do not be afraid.
Hey, awesome. Well, I want to thank our viewers for listening to our talk. I would like to thank our guest, Dr. Michelle Wallace-Rencher. I would like to thank the viewers. Like our page for future notifications of upcoming talks. Comment under our videos. Let us know your thoughts and let us know what you want us to talk about. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Can We Talk? Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all those social media platforms that you see on our page. And remember, let's think, talk, do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.